This is NC Spin, an unrehearsed discussion on issues of interest to North Carolinians. Now, here is your moderator, Tom Campbell.
Welcome. You've heard and read the spin the media and the politicians have put on the issues of the day. To get the correct spin on what's going on in North Carolina, let's introduce you to our panel of experts. They include NC Policy Watch's Chris Fitzsimon, former House Speaker Joe Mavretic, former Secretary of State and former Attorney General Rufus Edmisten, and syndicated columnist and author John Hood. Happy New Year! As is our tradition, we devote this first show each year to asking our panel to predict what we might see in the coming year. Let's get started. In 43 days, we're going to have the opportunity to vote, selecting party nominees for President, U.S. Senate, Governor, Council of State, Congress, legislators, and local elections. Rufus, as someone who's been in many statewide elections, how would you describe the political climate in North Carolina right now?
It's crazy. And you have a lot of upset people about things they don't know why, because they're just uneasy. You have each year more and more of the left and right-wing crazies on radio and television that stir people up. You don't have a discussion of the issues now because the 20-second soundbite boys that are called political consultants are really running political life. I think it's pretty lousy, to tell you the truth.
Joe, what do you think of the big issues that will be on voters' minds in March when they go to the polls?
I honestly do not know. I'm like Rufus. I read all of these sound bites, these quick questions and answers. The thing that comes through to me is that whoever can raise the most money is going to win contested elections.
Any other suggestions on the big issues?
Well, speaking as a right-wing crazy on television, I have to say,
can't argue with that.
I would have to say that in North Carolina, not surprisingly, the big issue in most of the races is going to be the economy. The trajectory of it, do people feel like we're heading in the right direction? Probably most people think we're headed in the right direction, but they may not agree that we're heading fast enough in the right direction.
Well, the polls show they don't think that.
I'm talking about the economy, not the society as a whole. People think that the country as a whole is on the wrong track. I agree with that. What I'm saying is most people would admit we're growing rather than shrinking when it comes to the economy. Some people might very well think it's simply not fast enough. So I think that's the key issue. And terrorism and national security is the second biggest issue. And it is going to affect not just the presidential race, but gubernatorial and all the way down the ballot.
Chris, a lot of people say that, understand that 2008 was the year that young people and minorities showed up to the poll and voted in Barack Obama in North Carolina and across the nation. What's 2016 going to be? Some are saying it's going to be the year of the angry white male.
Well, we say that every election. I think a lot of that depends on what the issues are, but I'm always fascinated that the same people who are saying North Carolina's economy is doing well and people are okay with that don't realize the national economy is doing a lot better than it was and think we've had these 8 horrible years of economic ruin when in fact the deficit's down, the stock market's up, unemployment is lower, and all those things. So it makes it tough for politicians to argue for one set of policies when the state is controlled by a different party than controls the national race. John's right about, I think, the current issue, as we sit here at the beginning of the year, is terrorism, national security. People are scared. Some politicians, I think, are trying to scare people more. But remember, there's a long way between even now and March, and a much longer way between March and November. We have no idea what the issues will be in the summer.
Next week, we're going to talk in specifics because the candidate filing deadline ended December 21st, and we're going to go into all the races. But among the Republican presidential primaries candidates at this time, John, who do you think is going to come out of that, and ultimately who will win North Carolina in the Republican presidential primary?
Well, if I knew that, I wouldn't tell you. I'd go sell that critical information to the highest bidder. But here's what I think. I think that it is a 3-person race. I think it's clearly Rubio, Cruz, and Trump. I think Trump's scenario is pretty limited. I know he's leading in a lot of polls. I think his actual prospects of being the nominee of the Republican Party are the least of the 3. I think the real race is actually going to end up being between Cruz and Rubio. I have no idea how that's going to turn out, but I think that's the real race. And not only does that make more sense according to traditional math and traditional politics, but it is also a fascinating debate between 2 young first-term senators who have state government experience, who are Cuban American, and it is a fascinating phenomenon.
All right, quick question. Will the ultimate winner of the presidential party nominations have that much effect on the North Carolina ballot? They have in the past.
You better believe it. I can pick at 1984 and tell you that Ronald Reagan killed me and Jim Hunt. If they nominate a Cruz or a Trump, I think you give a lot of headway to the Hillary Clintons and others down the ballot, because I think North Carolina is still a state that says, okay, this stuff about carpet bombing, this stuff about keeping everybody out, just doesn't quite work in North Carolina.
Joe, with all the races being combined into this March primary, are we going to have a big turnout? Could it get up to the 60, 70% better turnout in the primary? Yeah.
No.
What is it going to be then?
Well, if you want my specific, primary turnout is 35.783, and the general election will be 35.783, and in the general election it'll be 70.494.
We still hadn't gotten over the holidays, have we? We thank you for watching NC Spin on the air or on YouTube. Here's a reminder that there's much more on our website, ncspin.com, or NC Spin on Facebook. You'll find video footage not seen anywhere else, perspective pieces from our panel, and weekly columns. Get more balanced debate from the Old North State on ncspin.com, NC Spin on Facebook, or on Twitter at NC Spin Tweets. All right, the rest of the year, we're going to ask our panel to predict after these messages.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
Phones are getting smarter, cars more efficient, TVs bigger and more stunning. Imagine the same innovation from agriculture. Meet the Plant Sciences Initiative at NC State, a proposed state-of-the-art research complex where world-class researchers will tackle agriculture's toughest challenges, like feeding the world's rapidly growing population while preserving natural resources for future generations. Join Farm Bureau and NC State in moving North Carolina to the forefront of ag research in the world. Visit keepaggrowing.org.
Hey everyone, I'm Linda Loveland. If feeding your family safe, affordable foods is a priority for you, then join me in saying thanks to the North Carolina farmers who feed us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's say thanks to the farmers who feed your family at #ThankNCFarmers. To learn more about the foods we eat and the farm families who feed us, visit feedthedialoguenc.com. And be sure to thank North Carolina farmers.
We now return to NC Spin.
Welcome back to our first session of the year in which we give our predictions on what's going to happen. In April, our legislature is going to reconvene what's called the short session. In election years, this abbreviated session generally doesn't pass much major legislation. Joe Mavretic, what's going to be the big issue for lawmakers when they come back to Raleigh?
Tweak the budget and get out of town.
Wow.
Just tweak the budget and get out of town.
So if they convene April 25th, you think they could be out by June 1st?
I think they would like to be out of here by May 15th if they possibly could in this year, because the coming general election is going to be a barn burner.
All right, Rufus, there are a lot of people saying they can't leave town without giving some pay raises to state employees.
Well, I think you'll definitely have a pay raise for state employees and teachers. And I disagree with Joe. I think they'll still be messing with some of these social issues. I think they'll be messing with vouchers, because so many of these people don't have a race. The way the districts are drawn, that's like, what's it make a difference to me? They're not going to rush out of here.
One of the wild cards this year, and we've talked about it on the show before, is that many of the legislative leaders, key leaders, Bob Ruto, Tom Apodaca, Paul Stam, and others, well, no, they're there this summer, and they're not running again. Right. And so the question is, do they have things they want to accomplish before they leave, or are they going to just be happy with trying to get out of town?
Ruto says we're going to have some more tax reform.
Well, that's right, and that will be a controversial push.
What else do you think we need to watch that might happen in this short session, John?
I tend towards Joe's view that it'll be a relatively compact session and that they'll focus on the budget. I also agree they'll do pay raises. And I think in addition to doing overall pay raises for teachers, I think they will revisit some of the discussions about how to improve the pipeline for new teachers to improve the quality of the teaching workforce over time.
All right, let's move on to the economy in 2016. North Carolina suffered more than many states during the Great Recession, and most all agree that we've been slow in recovery. UNC Charlotte professor of economics John Connaughton is predicting 2016 is going to be a stable and improving year with about 111,000 new jobs added and an improvement of about 2.5% rate of growth. John, do you agree with Connaughton? What's your prediction for the 2016 economy?
Well, Connaughton is projecting that we will have a greater job growth in 2016, but slower economic growth in 2016 than in 2015. I think he's half right. I think we'll probably do better than 2015 this year in both categories, though maybe not dramatically.
Rufus, you've been involved in economic development for a long time. Is this going to be the year that we're going to see these economic incentives that the governor got passed last year kicking in and making a difference?
Tom, you've not been in on this a long time on trips. I'm not sure that they've ever done any good because the way I've seen it, a lot of companies that were going to build new plants and put new people on got them anyway. So people are going to come to North Carolina because there's good education, because there's training, and that's the way it's always been and always will be.
Well, I think we ought to look at sectors. I think in agriculture, agriculture's got some dynamic areas. For example, I think entrepreneurs like cheese. I think sweet potatoes, purple sweet potatoes are big coming online. I think in the construction area, we're seeing a change from residences to condominiums and rental properties. And as long as John is right that the economy is going to get a little bit better, more disposable income, better tourist expenditures.
Any other sectors or any other comments on the economy?
Well, the biotechnology, I think, will dramatically improve because they finally got it right over the legislature that you can't kill that industry.
No, but I would just add, we're talking about incentives. We're talking about Ruto wants to cut taxes. We're also talking about pay raises. So it's that those things don't add up to a quick tweak on the budget. And I still think that the House and Senate will have much different views of how we do the budget.
All right, we'll be back and talk about more of what's going to happen in 2016 after these messages.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
The cost of everything has gone up dramatically over the last 75 years. With one exception, keeping electricity affordable. That's the power of your co-op membership. Learn more at togetherwesave.com.
North Carolina's Touchstone Energy Cooperatives, looking out for you.
It's a fact. Patients who receive care in the medical home from a trusted family physician reduce healthcare costs through prevention, early detection, and affordable management of high-cost chronic diseases.
Every dollar invested in healthcare matters. Let's invest them wisely, building on North Carolina's medical home model. Better health begins with a medical home, a trusted family physician, the best return on our healthcare investment. Learn about the importance of medical homes at ournchealthcare.com.
You sleep on concrete till your body get immune to concrete.
My mom got my brother and I up and said, "Come on, we're leaving."
I became homeless in the beginning of this year.
When I was about 4 or 5 years old, our house caught fire.
I used to see my brother. If he see me, he'd turn and go the other direction.
We did the only thing that we could think of, and we went to a Salvation Army shelter.
You know, we don't have this, like, what's your background look like? We just say, what do you need?
I remember the man from the Salvation Army coming down with a box of clothes.
The Salvation Army officer bought my brother and I an ice cream cone.
Last week, my brother walked up to me, and he just started a conversation.
Today I've given my life to the Salvation Army because I remember what somebody did for me, my brother, and my mom over 30 years ago.
The Salvation Army for me means hope.
Compassion.
Family.
Support.
We now return to NC Spin.
Welcome back to our special look ahead for 2016. We talked a great deal last year about court cases. There should be some big decisions on a lot of different issues during this coming year. Chris, the 2013 election reforms have certainly been challenged in court. Do you think we're going to have a verdict on voter ID prior to the March election?
Well, I think if we do, the court will be convinced that it's too quick and we have to go under the current rules. I think we're going to have this case is going to go way into the summer before we have any resolution on this.
So you don't think it's going to affect March primaries at all?
I would hope it would, but I think it's unlikely.
There have been several redistricting cases that the courts have taken. One, of course, is in Wake County so far as school board and county commissioners. Redistricting itself, there's still two districts that are under review in the courts. Are we going to get a decision on that prior to the March election, John?
I don't think we will get any decision that has any bearing on the March election. Even if there was a decision, there's not enough time to redraw it anyway. So I think we are where we are. And as far as getting to November and having dramatic court-required changes in the maps, congressional or legislative or local, I seriously doubt it. Even though I would be an advocate for changing the process, but the process as we have it now, there's recent Supreme Court precedent. It's fairly clear. The Republicans' argument is we followed that precedent at the state level, and that argument's pretty good.
Any other judicial cases?
No, it's not the cases. North Carolina has become like a clothing store. There's a new suit every week.
I think one of the most interesting ones is the case has been filed against a retention election for the Supreme Court, which we're going to have the first time this year. And there's a lawsuit that's been filed that says if you want to do that, you have to change the Constitution. I think that's a fascinating case.
It's been a lawyer's relief year.
All right, let's move on to the topic of education. This year we're going to get recommendations for curriculum adjustments so far as public education, and we're going to see a new president for the UNC system. I want to ask each of you, what education issues do you expect for us to be talking about in the year 2016? John, I'll start with you.
Tom, you alluded to the curriculum. I think that Common Core state standards is going to be a big issue in 2016. The legislature expects the commission they created to recommend at least some significant changes, particularly on the math side. I think that is what the commission will do. I think the legislature is prone to agree with it, and I think that folks trying to kill that reform effort will discover that they are fighting for a lost cause. This is not an argument against high state standards, but Common Core, particularly in math, has got so many parents riled, parents angry about it, I don't think it can be ignored.
Rufus, what do you think we're going to be talking about in education?
I think the biggest thing will be whether we continue the road we're taking toward vouchers and charter schools. Will that be the rule of the day?
All right. Joe, what do you think is the big issue in education this year?
I think the General Assembly will do something about the Board of Governors, its composition, and its expanse.
Interesting. In the short session?
No, I think it's going to be active all throughout 2016 and into 17.
Interesting. What do you think the big education
Well, I
issues?
think we talked about it last year. It was talked about, never came up, the Achievement School District that converts what are deemed low-performing schools into, turns them over to for-profit charters. Been tried and failed primarily in other states. I think that's one. I think it's interesting that there's now a Representative Leo Daughtry and a handful of other Republicans are speaking out about the complete lack of accountability in the voucher program that Rufus mentioned. Leo's retiring from the legislature. It'd be interesting to see if he raises that and starts a real debate about if we're going to have vouchers, should there at least be some minimum standards for those schools that get the money.
So far as the university system is concerned, we've got a new president. Margaret Spellings is going to be coming to work in March of this year, I understand. Is this going to be the year that we do away with all the discussion about the UNC athletics issue, Joe?
No.
Or is it going to keep going again?
No.
5 more years?
Yeah, at least throughout 2016.
No, let's don't discuss again. I got enough hate mail from the last time I talked about this.
All right. How is Spellings going to be received when she comes on?
I think that she will get a lot of goodwill at first from almost everybody except the faculty senates at the various universities, who will make themselves increasingly irrelevant by not having even basic levels of decorum and respect for someone they've not even met before.
I think she's.
But other than that, I think that the higher education debate, as it has been for several years, separate from the academic mess, I think it will be about affordability and the value that kids get and their parents get for the degree.
Well, they were her 3 themes.
Well, I think her big challenge is learning North Carolina. She doesn't know much about it. Learning the players, learning the leaders, figuring out where all the trouble spots are going to be. I think she'll have a rocky tenure at the beginning.
All right. Let's move on to the next subject. Who are we going to be watching this year? We always like to ask our panelists who we're going to be talking about in this coming year. So let me start with Joe. Who do you think we're going to be talking about?
Well, first I think we're going to be watching who fills the power vacuum for the departure of key leaders in the Senate. I think we're going to be watching what happens to Nelson Dollar. And I think we're going to be continuing to watch the issues between Speaker of the House and members of the caucus.
In the House. All right. Who are we going to be talking about this year?
I think we're going to be talking about some folks in the McCrory administration. You know, there are at least 2 federal investigations of the McCrory administration underway. One of the personal services contracts in the Department of Health and Human Services, one of which was a husband of a key worked in the company of Aldona Vosh's husband, a key McCrory contributor. The pay-to-play prison scandal, I'm not sure is going away. The FBI is investigating it. I don't know what they're going to find, but these investigations are ongoing. I think we may hear something about them in 2016.
Tom, let me ask John a question. Chris a question. Do you think that the timing of the FBI disclosures, since it's under a Democratic president, will be such that it affects the general election?
I don't know. That's a good question. We'll see. I mean, if it comes out, I don't know. Well, I guess we'll see what their findings are. They traditionally don't do that unless it's so egregious, but I think that'll be a big
We've been talking
question.
about what we're going to talk about. John, who are we going to be talking about?
Oh, well, modesty precludes me from answering that question, honestly.
Rufus Edmisten. Talk about him.
I wasn't thinking of him, but I was thinking of his cousin. But anyway, I would say that Pat McCrory is, of course, the big newsmaker of 2016 in North Carolina politics, but we're also going to be talking about Richard Burr, the U.S. Senator up for re-election. Interestingly, we don't hear a lot about Senator Burr, except when he's up for re-election. He just goes and does his job and is not a very prominent politician in the state when he's not on the ballot. But I think, we kind of ignore the fact that we've got a U.S. Senate race in 2016, partially because people think Burr has somewhat of an edge, but this is a very competitive state. We don't know what the national ticket's going to look like, and so his race is certainly not a given.
Well, Tom, let me tell you, too, we should be talking about the 2 open seats, Attorney General, which I think is the only office left that's a bulwark of freedom between the people and tyranny, and the state treasurer, which is one of the most important jobs in North Carolina, and you ought to know because you were the deputy. We should be talking about them.
So whoever is going to be filling them is who we should be talking about.
I think it's one other person, Dan Forrest. I think 2016 is going to be Dan Forrest and his wife Alice coming out year, and I think he is clearly a person to watch long-term in North Carolina.
So what's he going to do
in a very positive way? Well, first of all, he is an architect by trade. One of McCrory's big programs is the buildings of state that the state has. He has been on the vanguard of a lot of education issues. Education is the biggest business of the state. So I think that we're going to hear a lot more about Dan Forrest and his wife Alice.
We're going to be talking about Phil Berger much?
To some extent,
yeah,
sure.
I think we'll be talking about Phil Berger. Of course, he's arguably the most powerful politician in the state.
That's why I was asking.
Yeah. I mean, I think that whether or not the Senate, we talked about this in the last segment, whether the Senate pursues more tax reform could well define not just the session, but how long it is. More tax cuts.
All right. After these messages, we're going to ask for other predictions for 2016.
NC Spin is brought to you in part by the North Carolina Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau and Agriculture. We keep North Carolina growing.
Everyone, I'm Linda Loveland. If feeding your family safe, affordable foods is a priority for you, then join me in saying thanks to the North Carolina farmers who feed us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's say thanks to the farmers who feed your family at #ThankNCFarmers. To learn more about the foods we eat and the farm families who feed us, visit feedthedialoguenc.com. And be sure to thank North Carolina farmers.
Clean transportation options can help you fuel what matters.
We're fueling what matters to us by converting our fleet of collection trucks over to compressed natural gas. It's a good, smart business decision, and having the air cleaner is something that benefits all the families that work with us.
We use biodiesel in our heavy equipment. We've got propane in a lot of our police cars, and we've really embraced the electric car. Join the city of Raleigh and fuel what matters.
To learn how you can fuel what matters, visit fuelwhatmatters.org.
Phones are getting smarter, cars more efficient, TVs bigger and more stunning. Imagine the same innovation from agriculture. Meet the Plant Sciences Initiative at NC State, a proposed state-of-the-art research complex where world-class researchers will tackle agriculture's toughest challenges, like feeding the world's rapidly growing population while preserving natural resources for future generations. Join Farm Bureau and NC State in moving North Carolina to the forefront of ag research in the world. Visit keepaggrowing.org.
Longtime viewers of our show know that we typically in this last segment ask the panel to tell us something we don't know. We're going to switch gears since this is the first show for 2016. We're going to ask the panel to give us their other predictions for what we might have coming up during this coming year. Joe Mavretic?
Well, we talked earlier about the bond referendum. I think the bond referendum is going to educate a lot of people in North Carolina about our infrastructure needs. The American Association of Civil Engineers every 2 years puts out kind of a scorecard. I think the general public in North Carolina will find out that North Carolina rates a C, but also that our surrounding states, Virginia, West Virginia, Tennessee, South Carolina, Georgia, they're all C states also. Where we fall down is water and wastewater treatment. And those are huge issues. We take water and wastewater issues almost for granted. And we're going to find out how far behind we are. We've got a lot of really old school buildings. We're going to find out about how old those buildings really are. So I think when the debate ends about the bond and the follow-on, whether they pass or fail, I think that North Carolinians are going to be a whole lot more well-informed about basic structure.
All right, Chris, what are your predictions?
Well, I think we're going to see, we've seen a lot of talk about campaign finance reports, and I don't know whether there'll be an ethics scandal of major proportion this coming year, but I think you're going to see an increasing amount of conversation about how, not just how politicians raise their money, but how they spend their money. What's the law? What's the policy of the State Board of Elections? I think that will be a significant issue in this campaign year.
Interesting. John?
Tom, we've heard a lot of talk, we've seen a lot of effort going on to assemble industrial sites, mega sites in the Piedmont Triad area of the state, in particular, the central part of the state. I think in 2016, those pitches will get some buyers. Not necessarily an auto manufacturer, which is everybody's seeming holy grail they're seeking, but I think there will be interest in those prospects in 2016.
Interesting. And if somebody's going to buy a mega site, then we have to assume it's going to be a pretty big size fish.
That's correct, or a set of.
Set of. All right, good. Rufus, what's your other predictions for 2016?
I predict there'll be no fracking in North Carolina because, first of all, you can't get anybody to come. We tried to pay them. There's none here to begin with. And secondly, I predict that the legislature will pass laws saying that if you're caught driving drunk, you're going to have to wear one of those ignition unlock systems on your car.
Interesting. Well, we hope you've enjoyed this look ahead to the year 2016, and we remind you that you can stay informed all during the week, give your feedback, and read my weekly column by visiting our website, ncspin.com, or you can catch NC Spin on Facebook. We hope you'll join us next week when we're going to really focus on the races and the candidates in the March 15th primary election. Until then, stay informed and watch out for the spin.
Join us next week and get the spin on issues facing our state.